Over there, I so done. Lovely, yeah. Well, I did say briefly just earlier on, I'm going to be reading this. I'm got too old to just talk at you and I'm going to forget what I'm saying. So forgive me while I keep looking down and I'll try and look up as much as possible. One of the things, I'm not going to talk about sound dubbing in any way or form. I'm just going to talk about life experiences. And hopefully some of it might be of some use to you folks, so we'll do that. One thing I started doing is I started writing it down for my own children, my own grandkids. So I've taken some extracts out of that, and I'll read you little anecdotes, or not life experiences actually, from the time I was working. So I hope that will be useful to you. So now I was going to start as we're heading slowly for Christmas, like it goes to the Christmas bars. I'm going to take you back to my past and to read some of the lessons I've learned throughout my career. But just before I do, we'd like a quick show of hands. Who would like to work in film or television or broadcast? Most of you. Anyone particularly like to be a director? Yeah. And anyone like to be a cinematographer or camera person? Yeah. And what about editors? Anyone want to be an editor? Yeah. Yeah. I mean, obviously people. I'm a music composer. Anybody here can do music composer? Lovely. And anybody here want to be a sound person? Well done, you. Thanks for that. So just get stuff right. It was 51 years ago, last Tuesday. I started as a training assistant dubbing mixer. The Americans have taken over as always, and now the word dubbing mixer is rarely ever used. But now I'm retired, it's now a re-recording mixer. So I was a dubbing mixer for my whole career, but now I'm retired. I'm a re-recording mixer, which is a bit strange, but there we are, that's how it goes. I could fill in the day talking about the art and craft of sound mixing, but today I'd like to take you back over 50 years to November 1973. You go outside there, Tom. Isn't that fantastic? How on earth did this strange-looking, slightly shy and geeky 18-year-old with big hair become a dubbing mixer? Was it because I'm handsome? Maybe not. No. Okay. You can hit it again. We can get shot of that one pretty quick, thanks. Now here's a far more recent picture of me with short hair in my last studio based near Kingsbridge. So what happened in the years in between to go from there to there? Well, the credit list rolling earlier on was from some of the shows I worked on over the last 14 years as a dubbing mixer. I find it extraordinary that so many have turned up on YouTube, especially this one. Yeah, thanks, Tom. This was a program broadcast in early 1979. I was 23, and it was one of my first TV credits. It has an unpleasant but useful story to go with it. I'm going to read you from my memories. The BBC spent a large portion of its children's budget in 1979 making several Blue Peter special assignments, and I was lucky enough to dub one of them. It was about composer Vivaldi and was filmed in Venice. Sarah Hellings was the director, and the session went very well up to and including the M&E track, which was the hardest part of the day. For any of you who don't know, an M&E stands for musical effects. Do any of you know that? Right. You make a musical effects track first, that can then go to France or something, and they put their own French narration over it and stuff like that. So the last thing to do was to mix the narration, which we recorded earlier, together with the M&E to make the final mix. This should have been the simplest and relaxing part of the dub. Oh, how wrong could I have been? Starting to run through the final mix, I had a big problem. The stabilizing rollers on the recording sound folder was slow to pull in. I'd been too quick to enter record, which meant Vivaldi's glorious music could be heard with wow in the speed as the rollers settled down. Absolute and total disaster. Sarah Hellings, the director, was rightly distraught. The only cure was to run through the M&E and remix each and every problem, a long and late night for all of us. It was a truly gorgeous programme, and I did get there in the end. I was very proud to be one of my first major BBC credits on it. But I'm still ashamed to this day, and hope Sarah will have it in her heart to forgive me. She carried on directing many fine dramas, but of course I never saw her again. I do remember all my ex-flatmates sitting around to watch the show out at prime time on a Sunday evening, a big cheer for my credit. I'm sure I never told them the truth behind the dub. Fortunately, it didn't stall my career, and it taught me to be a lot more careful in the future. So basically from that, don't worry if major things go wrong early on. It's going to happen, and you can learn by it. Just next slide, Tom, which is nothing. Cheers. Yeah. Overall, I've had a lot of good luck and often been in the right place at the right time. For a start, my first boss and guru was an immensely talented doyen of the industry, a dubbing mixer called Lou Hanks. He would be 97 now if he was still alive. He actually died during COVID. That was 93 or 4. And this young assistant started working for him at his company, Universal Sound, on November the 19th, 1973, aged 18. Most of the training Lou gave to me when I first started is as useful today as it was originally. It helped me deal with mistakes and contributed to my fair share of success, which is now quick to the water colours. Since 1973, I've been involved in the construction and ownership of several studios, used the first fully digital sound studio on the planet, and also worked on many thousands of productions. But, and this is a big but, I've never been happy with any of the mixes I created. Content maybe, but never happy. And that has driven me always to try harder. I remember my friend Chris Power, who was my assistant, we'd finished a day's work and the clients had left. I said, Chris, did the dub go okay? He said, yeah, well, it went fine. He said, you sure? I said, yeah, if I did that. So he went fine. Were they happy, Chris? They were happy for it, it went fine. It was one of your dubs. What do you mean it was one of my dubs? Well, it was one of your dubs. You have a style. Do I? I never realised that. I have a style. So there we are. In my career as a dubbing mixer and studio owner, I've been privileged to train many brilliant assistants and mentor several others. Every single one of them, like my good friend Tom and colleague Tom, are now highly respected dubbing mixers. Now, that's enough of that. Let's start on the helpful hints. This is an early and to all of us, no matter how hard we try to hide it, common problem. And it's one that never really goes away. You may find yourself feeling intimidated or shy about a situation you find yourself in when working on a production. A production that could be well full of big egos and more famous faces. So I'm going to read from my memories again. I was 19 when this happened. The narration or voiceover recording session was for the assistant, the time to meet all the well-known, the slightly famous, and the extremely famous. After several years, it became easier to say who I had met rather than who I hadn't. Part of my job was to welcome the clients and narrator with a cup of tea or coffee, and then take the narrator to the voiceover booth, place the microphone in front of them, and make sure they were comfortable. In a short space of time, I'd met Sir John Gielgud, Sir Anthony Hopkins, and Dame Margaret Rutherford, amongst many lesser mortals. You've probably never heard of them, but my goodness, when I was younger, they were absolutely top of the notch, top of the. I remember settling one actor into the voiceover booth. He seemed more nervous to meet me than I did to meet him. Of course, it was his job. It was the job ahead that made him nervous. Nonetheless, as I gave him a cup of coffee and placed the microphone near to him, it did seem surreal. Why? Because he was considered at the time to be the greatest actor on the planet, and his name was Sir Laurence Olivier. This cured me of any shyness or nerves, even to this day, really. If the greatest actor on the planet had stage fright, that means everybody does, no matter how well they hide it. So what is the point of worrying? Good lesson to learn. If someone's ego does get in the way, ignore it. It's their problem, not yours. I find it helps to share it with a friend in the industry who's had to deal with the same problem and laugh about it. So, back to you guys. Your first job could well be as a runner making the tea or coffee for the clients. It's not demeaning. It's quite the opposite. Often, over a boiling kettle, you'll be joined by the people who have come along to the session. It could be executive producers and directors, even the top people in the industry. Some of them come for a bit of a jolly. Others, if the long day jogs along, are just getting a bit bored and wander off to help the runners. So don't knock making cups of tea. It's a great time to meet people who could be influential in your career. Having said that, the main people who are important throughout your career are your contemporaries and your friends. They will be the future directors, head of cameras, editors, sound recorders and mixers, makeup artists, composers, people you'll meet at every stage. This is important, so I shall say the next bit slowly. On your journey, treat each and every project you work on as if it's your own child, your own baby, no matter how low is the budget, or for that matter how cheaply or badly made it is. Even so, after the session is finished and you've done your very best at the time available, my old mate and fellow double mixer Mike Nutdozer and I used to sometimes think, when the sound was so bad, it was like trying to mix two dog foods together and make them smell sweet. Right, another quote on the same line, really. The most important part of this session is to treat every project like any major project, with as much care and love as possible, no matter the budget or the quality. Lou, my first boss, had arranged with the Harrow Film School to dub all their end-of-course films. One of the films brought in was by Mel Morpeth and Bill Ogden. We were about the same age, same sense of humour, and the same love of the industry. I gave all the love and care I could, even though there was no money in it, and Bill and Mel were still only students. Not long after they graduated, they succeeded in getting a contract for 28 one-hour programmes for S4C, the Welsh channel. 13 programmes in Welsh, the same 13 programmes into English, with all the interviews re-recorded in English. One hour-long compilation programme in Welsh, the same programme again in English. It was well over a month's worth of studio time, and they brought it all to me. We became good friends, and when they were both chosen to set up the new state-of-the-art studio editing suite, Fleet Street Films, it was stunning to see their new home. Working for Mel and Bill was always good fun, and proved to be a game changer for me. In 1984, I left the long hours of London with my wife and 2 young kids, moved to South Devon to join the ITV company in Plymouth, TSW, Television South West, with Gus Honeywell. 8 years later, disaster. They lost their franchise. In their attempt to win the franchise in 1989, they bought for me, with my dubbing suite, the world's first true digital sound studio. Made by OMS, it was to change the face of sound post-production, and I was the lucky boy to be the first user. In fact, my system turned out to be the prototype. With TSW's demise, I bought it from them and resold it to a London editing company called Max, on the condition I came with it. I've been 8 years away from London, and I'd been forgotten or unknown by the then current batch of editors and directors. Nats were editing a BBC factual show and suggested they used me to do the sound post-production. The editor was called, and yes, you may have guessed it, my old friend Mel Morpeth. Mel asked if Paul Roberts was the one he used to know. Well, obviously it was me. His director-producer was called Ben Gale, and the 3 of us got on like a house on fire. After 18 months, I left Nats, and with my business partner Rob Butler-Biggs set up our own company, Fitzrovia Post-Production, in London's West End. The producer, Ben Gale, joined a new, very successful production company called Lion Television, and brought to me his new factual BBC series called Airport. And very successful it was too, getting over 11 million viewers. Series 2 did just as well and won me a BAFTA. Another of their series, Hotel, got me another BAFTA nomination, as did another of their series, Paddington Green. Fitzrovia and my London career both took off at a rate of knots, all because I treated Bill and Mel's film with love and care. Those students. You don't know what's going to happen next year. Keeping on the same thing, by this time, the negative effect of not caring about someone else's hard work on their production. Are you guys all right with me reading this stuff out? Yeah, thanks. Okay, let's read a bit more again. I assisted a double mixer called Rod Guest until 1978, when he left Universal Sound while I took over his job. He was a fine double mixer, but after he'd left, he indirectly taught me a lesson on how not to treat the clients. When I was about to mix one of his former customers' sessions, they told me they never liked working with Rod. Why not, I asked. They told me, he's a good double mixer, but he always greets you with, what's this rubbish we got today then? And he did, yeah. The editor then said, because I spent weeks and months working on this rubbish, and several late nights getting it ready for the dub, I didn't like working with Rod, so I'm glad you've taken over. It was a lesson well learned early in my career. Always treat the production with love, respect, and enthusiasm. I think I've said that one enough now, have I? Maybe not. Right, next, there aren't always sweetness and light during a session, and here's one way to keep people happy. My first boss in doing Lou Hanks had taught me that dealing with the situation and making sure that clients are comfortable and happy was the most important part of the job. The clients expect you to have the right machinery, and they expect you to know how to use it, making them feel comfortable and at home when you're sure they will want to come back again. Because of these wise words, I developed all sorts of methods for averting conflict. I'll never forget, by the time one BBC session arrived, both the director and film editor hated each other. The film editor sat next to me and controlled the dub from his track-laid cue sheet, pointing out how he'd like to hear the sound mix. The director, who was the governor and he who must be obeyed, sat in front of the mixing desk and called a shot of how he'd like to hear the sound develop. Tension was high, and I knew the film editor well. Also, he brought me lots of dubs and jobs, so it was a bit tricky. So, all the way through the dub, I was told one way by the editor and another way by the director. The only way was to suggest the third way and to try it. I made sure my suggestion was pretty crap, and they would both say, no, not like that. At which point, I choose the best of their suggestions. When we go on to the end of the session, I do remember the editor cottoned on at some point. You know what the quick sort of all time here. I can bring it. While still an assistant, my old friend and ex-colleague, Mike Nardaz, and I would take pleasure in treating the most awkward of clients as well as possible. I remember several rude or unpleasant clients we had to endure. The ruder or more unpleasant they became, the harder we would try and please them, look after them, smile happy at them, make sure that nothing was too much trouble. In the end, over the weeks, months, and even years, we wore them down, until at last they would become pleasant back. Next, have any of you heard of the comedy series The Two Ronnies? Does anybody have The Two Ronnies? You've heard of it?
Yeah, I've heard of it. My parents have often spoke about it.
Yeah, it was years ago. Yeah. But have you heard of Morecambe and Wise at all, anybody? Yeah. Well, after Morecambe and Wise left the BBC, The Two Ronnies was a top-rated show with over 18 million viewers, so it was a very popular series. And here's a good example of a lesson I learned as a young 23-year-old dubbing mixer. I was 23 when this happened. One of my first sessions with The Two Ronnies in 1978 was going quite well, but it was past midnight and we were all getting a little jaded. I had my own assistant by now, called Chris Powell. He needed a pee, and when he was out of the room, to save time, I ran the picture, leaned over to one of the turntables and started it, to set the level of a piece of music he was going to spin into the session. That music doesn't come in here, barked the director, Marcus Mortimer. I know, I told him in no uncertain terms. I'm just getting a level while Chris is out of the room. For the rest of the night, tired and exhausted, I ignored Marcus Mortimer totally and referred all my questions to Ronnie Barker, who was one of the Two Ronnies, obviously. On my way home, I realised what a fool I'd been. After all, Marcus Mortimer was a senior director at the BBC. What had I gained? Nothing. What had the director Marcus Mortimer gained? Nothing. What good did it do me? None. I resolved never, no matter how tired I was, to do that again. That is, if I still had a job the next day. Well, I did get away with it, and I continued to dub all the Two Ronnies until I left Universal in 1984. But it really did teach me that's probably the best lesson I've ever learned in my whole career. No matter how tired, how fed up you are, don't let it show. It's not going to do you any good at all. Finally, to round up all I've said and to add a few extra thoughts. You could well be working long hours, very long hours. Program makers constantly underestimate the amount of time they need, and often the only way to get the session finished, as Tom knows over there, before the next one arrives, is to work into the evening, even the early hours of the next day. To start with, it'll be low pay. As you become more and more useful, your wages will catch up with other careers and can well overtake them. To be fulfilled, you get back whatever hard work you put in, and receiving the thanks and praise of those you're working with can be a real boost and confidence builder. But you can also expect not to be thanked at all for your hard work and hours put in. In the real world, so never think about you'll be acknowledged for everything you do. Sometimes you could be even told off for something you're doing right and praised for getting it wrong. It is more often than not in a high-stress environment that you'll need to develop a thick skin to cope with it, to be prepared for it. You'll meet many interesting people, some very well known, some extremely well known, and some the most powerful in the industry. But most importantly, you'll meet the people who will become your lifetime friends. All the people who come to see you or work with you will expect you to have the right equipment, will expect you to know how to use it. Therefore, 90% of the job is looking after clients and making them feel comfortable and welcome. A keen interest in their job is so important. It is not just a matter, it must not matter what you personally think of it or how you rate it. Every job should be treated as the best you've ever worked on. But people who made a film or program have often worked incredibly hard to finish it and get it ready. They spent weeks, months, or even years creating it, nurturing it, wiring over it, financing it, and hours upon hours producing it until it's ready for you. Don't ever treat it as a joke, cheap, or not so good. Always treat it as if it's your own production, your own baby. People will love you forever for taking that approach. Also, you shouldn't talk about the previous client's session or how late you finished. You should always try to be bright-eyed and happy to start their new one. Because if they do ask you about yesterday's job, tell them, but don't complain about it, and definitely don't belittle it. Hospitality is also important. You should take a cup of tea or coffee and arrange a biscuit to get people feeling comfortable, and a cheery smile will impress people no end. It really helps to smile and to be friendly all the time. Okay, be hard and you're tired and worn out, but it will make those around you appreciate you more. Not only will these simple courtesies make the clients feel happy, but it will also help them treat you with respect and make your day much more pleasant. I know I've said this before, I'm sorry to keep saying it again. It will be especially nice to unpleasant people you're working with. Not only will it floor them, but slowly and surely they'll become better to work with. It could take time, but it's definitely worth all the effort. Make everything no trouble at all. You should start softening the hardest of difficult clients, sometimes quite quickly. I would, as a WMXer in charge of session, try and remember to thank my assistant at least once and tell them that'll have to last the whole day. As in a fast-moving and complex session, there's little time for pleasantries. So always forgive your senior colleagues if they seem to be taking you for granted. They're definitely not. They might just not have the time to show it. Part of being good at your job is being a yes person and not a no person. But also being realistic. If you have too many people asking for tasks at the same time, try and work out which one should be their priority and politely explain, I must just finish this job first, for the request, for the less urgent ones. I've never had to advertise or chase work. Every job has come to me either through word of mouth or people, many of whom become good friends, who turn it to me to look after their projects. This was because of those simple but sometimes hard niceties I was taught when I first started. Nearly there. Don't forget that the early years of your career are the time when you will make enduring friendships. In my career, the training sound people met training picture editors and also met those who will become directors. You will all grow older together and into senior positions and all share many productions in the years ahead. And of course, they'll recommend to you to others who will pass the word on and then on again. You're right for the next slide, Tom. So the final one. Right. Thinking about your career ahead, the best advice I can give you is always smile, be prepared to work very long hours, don't be frightened to chase up interviews of possible job opportunities. This is important, actually, it's very important. Even a bit of friendly badgering doesn't harm. But this is fact, this happened to me. Someone kept asking me, well, I needed an assistant, I didn't have to advertise. They were the person that took on. Keeping in front of potential employers' awareness is never a bad thing. Most employers will treat it as enthusiasm. If they don't like it, you won't only get the job anyway. Always arrive on time or earlier. Time really is money in film broadcast, and nobody, no matter how important they are, should be late. I mean, I'm talking about some of the top people in the business. They're never late. They usually turn up early, if any. When starting a project, get ahead of the game, share as much of the session as possible before the clients arrive. Don't expect to earn much to start with. That will come with time and experience. Make the customer's life pleasant. Be nice to them even if they're being horrible to you. My lovely friend Inika, who ran the front of house at my London studios, surprised me when she told me, "Your clients are very lucky, Paul. When they come here with their programs, you give them a magic carpet ride." So my last piece of advice to you is, give everyone you work with a magic carpet ride. Thank you. I'm sorry it was so stumbling. It's been a long read. I've read to the grandchildren. It won't go about that. So thank you very much. Now, Tom, anybody, have you got any questions? Because I really am quite good at answering questions when it comes to anything to do with production or working in the industry. Please don't feel shy. Anybody got anything?
Well, then,
Yeah.
Yeah, hi.
What's your favourite genre to work on? Like,
Drama.
oh, yeah.
Yeah, I've often been asked what was my favourite programme I ever worked on. I'd be honest with you, I had worked on thousands of programmes, many thousands of programmes. The one that I was most proud to work on, got nothing to do with drama at all, was a documentary. And there was a very well-known journalist called John Pilger who died recently. And with his friend David Monroe, they went in about 1969 to Cambodia, where the Khmer Rouge were killing everybody. And they went in at great danger to themselves. And they brought this information to the outside world. No one knew what was happening in Cambodia. And it made a big change. Well, later on in life, they made another program, which they brought to me, which was about East Timor. At the time, the country was 600,000 people, and 200,000 had already been killed by the Indonesians. So the program was incredibly important. It went around the world. It was a 90-minute film and it was a 60-minute program. It was the only program I've really worked on that changed something massively in the world. After that program, it was a big hoo-ha, and the Indonesians stopped the genocide of the East Timor people. So that was the one that sticks to the mind most. Yeah. Yes.
What was your final project that you worked on?
Okay, the final project was Rick Stein actually, which then Tom took over dubbing, which he was a chef. I don't know, do you know Rick Stein?
I think I've heard of him.
Yeah, he's a chef, and the special thing about working with Rick Stein was the guy in charge called David Pritchard, and he was a giant of the industry. He was one of these people that would take a program and we get a can of Stardust and twinkle it over it, and just take something that was pretty damn good and making it pretty extraordinary. I worked with David, probably, and Rick for about 25 years. That's one of those relationships I hadn't had with many programs. He was saying, did the two runs for about 3 or 4 years, or did this or that for maybe a year of this program only once. Yeah. Does that answer that all right?
Yeah.
Oh yes, it was Rick Stein. Well, I did actually do something a bit like, have you heard of an actor called John Nettles?
yeah.
Yeah. Well, John Nettles, I'd worked with a lot over the years, and he asked if I could do a quick voiceover record for a charity. Well, that's the last thing I recorded, the day after I pulled the studio out, because I didn't want to be sending this to any more projects, basically. I wanted to say that's it. And I got a photo of that. That's the last photo of me doing the last thing, was recording John Nettles, but the actual program was recent. Hi.
So you talk about like being nice and positive, but how do you find collaborating with other people, like at that stage?
I found it very easy because I think everyone in the industry is in there for the same reason. If everyone's got an ego problem, throw it away because it's not worth having. It's a complex and intense industry when you're working in it. You need to help each other out. Someone you think, oh, well, they're doing that, I should be doing that. No, if they're doing it and it's going well, just start doing it. So if you're working well with people around you, I don't think you should have a problem. I mentioned a guy called Mike Narduzzo. I started working after Rob Gebb Rod Guest left and became the double mixer. And I was working on all these big shows, all these big programs, fantastic. But I was working late, long hours, and my boss then brought through a colleague who's working in the transfer switch, Mike Baldezzo, to be a double mixer. It didn't take long for me to realise that Mike was going to be a better double mixer than I ever will be or was. And I found that a bit like, oh, blimey. But we're still best mates to this day. He's still a bit of a double mixer, but he's still a best mate. So, anybody you're working with, just try and make them as a friend. And if you don't get on with them, well, just skirt gently around it. Yeah. Hi.
So what inspired you to sort of work in the industry, particularly in sound?
Very good question. I cannot play a single musical instrument. I'll try, but I miss the keyboard. I can't do it. So, but I wanted to work. I wanted to work with the Beatles. I wanted to work with Pink Floyd. I was 13. I just wanted to do these things, so I wanted to work in a music recording studio, which would have been pretty stupid. I couldn't play music. But I was very lucky that my parents went to a wedding, and they were discussing. I was at school still at the time with a guy called Len Tron that their son wanted to get into sound because he was passionate about it. And he said, well, this friend Lou Hanks was building a new dubbing theatre, perhaps he could give I could talk to him. At the time, Len Tron's wife was dying of cancer, and his daughter had just been killed in a car crash, and he did that for me. Isn't that fantastic?
That is.
And I got in touch with Lou, and I went for an interview, and he hired me there and then.
Wow.
Really, wow. So the other thing is, just go out there. As I say, hassle people. Don't be frightened of it. You might think, oh, I don't want to hear from me again. No, they might not do, but do it. It doesn't matter, because they will, you won't really get the job anyway if they find closed down. But most people take it as being enthusiastic. So keep pushing, just keep pushing. And you will make it, honestly. Yeah. Next question. Hi.
Hi. Have you noticed any trends popping up lately? Or,
Well, the trend that I noticed really, I've been talking with Tom about, is the demise of people's interest. I mean, I've got, my son 44, my daughter's 42, my other son's 40, and I've got 6 grandchildren. They don't watch terrestrial television. They stream it all. They don't watch the news much. And the kids, my grandchildren certainly, they're looking at their phones or whatever. So what's going to happen next? I mean, are people just going to be content with watching 30-second clips for the rest of their lives? I don't think so. I think people forget sometimes that we all grow older. And as we all get older, we get bored with looking at TikTok, we get bored of looking at YouTube. And suddenly, then we might find ourselves having a partner, then we might find ourselves getting married to that partner. And then maybe you want to sit in a bit more rather than to get out for bed. And then maybe you want to watch something that's actually a film length or even just a 1-hour program or something. So I think long-form programs will always exist. I hope desperately the BBC will carry on existing, because no matter what people say, it is unbiased. I've heard so many people say, oh, the BBC will bias on this program in this direction, or the bias on that program in that direction. But both different sides of thoughts, and of course they're just trying to do it. They try too hard sometimes, which is a bit boring, the BBC. But we have an incredible broadcast industry here with the BBC and ITV, because ITV follow along very well as well, trying to keep everything straight, trying to make good, honest productions. My God, we make some good dramas at the moment. I've been watching them. I'm getting old. I love them. They're fantastic. Dubbing sometimes, I have a little word I want to talk about. I was thinking I've joined LinkedIn again. I actually cancelled my LinkedIn thing, but I rejoined it again. Maybe dubbing. So I just want to put out there that we're not favouring the dialogue enough. It is hard to hear the dialogue sometimes, and people should learn to be politer to the audience, I think. Yeah. Anybody else? Bye.
Out of all the programs you worked on, what is your favourite one to watch?
Oh gosh, I'll have to think about that. Probably the one I was working on at the time I was doing it. It's always good to watch what you're working on, because when you see it on television, it sounds different to how it sounds within the studio. And I could always switch off when I'm watching a program, so I could just enjoy it and then watch it. And then if something bad came up, I made a mistake, I should have mixed that like that. So you're learning all the time the craft, You never stop learning the craft. So I quite enjoy kids' programs as well. I did well for animations. I love working on animations, so I love watching those too. But at the moment, I just watch dramas. I like detective dramas and stuff. But yeah, so they're kind of my favourite. Comedies, I like comedies. I like being entertained. And we watch the news a lot, which we shouldn't do. Yeah.
What was your biggest program you worked on?
Well, biggest for recording things was the 2 Minutes because it was massive. As I said, you know, getting 18 million viewers. That was you know the BBC's biggest show during the whole year, you know, year after year. So that was the biggest production I worked on for yeah, really. I mean, I did work on other things. As an assistant, I worked on Monty Python. Have you heard of Monty Python? Yeah. I worked on that as an assistant, you know, meeting these guys, which was pretty gobsmacking, to be honest, because I was 18, 19 when I was working on that with them. And they were just lovely, great, ordinary people. They had a great end of session party was on the HMS Belfast well up in the Thames, and that was quite an experience. So yeah, it's a pretty good experience as well. I mean, the people I've worked with, I mean, that's the other thing. With some of them, have just been like, I mean, you probably don't know, there's a guy called Christian Slater. Did anyone know an actor called Christian Slater? Well, he came in to do something. We had the studio in Devon at that time, and Christian Slater came in to do something. And honestly, I didn't know who he was. The session finished, so my daughter was on the phone. I said, Eddie, who's Christian Slater? She said, why? I said, he's been in the studio. Christian Slater's been in your studio. You didn't tell me? Well, I didn't know. He just came in and off he went again. But working with some really good people, actually. That's one thing I hope that, you know, in your careers, that you'll find that you just meet fantastic people. Some of them, there's a guy called Rennie Cutthorpe, who was a correspondent during and after the war years. He met Stalin, Eisenhower, Gandhi. I mean, you just go on, and you go to the pub with him at lunchtime, you get these stories out of these people. It's like, I mean, that's pretty special. Yeah. Anybody else got that? Yeah, one question. I just say thank. Oh yeah, please, yeah.
Sorry, I keep asking.
No, you're fine.
Do you have any advice for like entering bigger companies, like BBC or 2-4 or anything like that?
Yes. Go there in person. See if you can actually go in. If you can find somewhere that you can be friendly with, turn up. And then when you go in, this actually happened to me. Someone I knew actually did that. They came into the studio where I was working. They didn't work there or anything. They just, hi Paul. I said, oh hello. Can I get you a cup of tea? Oh no, thanks. And they went down to the tea area and made a cup of tea and brought that back. And they just kept turning up. And then when I needed an assistant, I just hired them. It was a no-brainer. So if you can make a friend that works there, it always helps. People have contacts. If you have a particular part, I mean, I still have contacts on 2-4. That if you're keen, I could point you in a direction to. You can say what to side you're interested in. As does Tom, I know for sure. Be persistent. Don't be frightened. I did find we needed a new runner in London. We made the mistake of putting it in as an advertisement in one of the trade magazines. The application snowflaked through the letterbox. I mean, hundreds of applicants came through. And we only had so much time when we could interview them. So it was a real trick to go through. All the CVs say the same thing. Everybody's CV says the same thing, I can assure you that. It's the letter you put with it that's important. That's the thing that's going to hook someone to ask you to come and fill it. So, you know, your CV, yes, you need to have it there, but it's the letter that you're writing. Personally, and I don't think this applies anymore, personally, if someone had written a handwritten letter on eBay, I'd even more thought, because I hate writing. So I thought, if they bother to write it, I'm going to bother to read it. But that might count. But it's the letter that send with the application, definitely.
I'll chip in on that one.
Sorry?
I'll chip in on
Yeah,
that one.
please do, yeah.
So, thinking about that, you know, emails and writing emails and digital CVs and things, they're much more common. To stand out, a handwritten letter you know, or showing up in person would really help
Oh,
make
sure.
you stand out. But you don't have to do too much to get noticed.
Yeah. There was nothing to do actually. Well, it was getting a job. There was to be a well-known a comic guy, Kenny Everett. He was a brilliant DJ. He was really top of his game. And how he got into the BBC, he went to the television centre. He found that if you held the thing in film cans, you could just go through security and no one would stop you. So he used to go up to the main desk at the BBC television centre and ask if they could turn on Kenny Everett for him. So they turn on Kenny Everett, and would come anyway. And he did that quite a few times. So the first time he went into the BBC for an interview and said, "My name's Kenny Everett," he said, "Oh yeah, we've heard that name around. That's clever, isn't it? That really is clever." So, there's ways and tricks that you might think of just getting yourself ingratiating yourself really. If you're keen, it's very hard to find people that are keen in the industry. Very hard to find people prepared to work long hours just to warn you about it. So if you do find people who can do that, it's gold. Anybody else? It's been fabulous talking to you folk. Thank you for sitting here and listening to me waffle on and being a bit boring at times. But thank you very much indeed. I applaud you guys. I'm looking forward to maybe seeing your credits if I ever remember your name. But it'll be great. Thank you very much. Yeah.